joined with Derrick Pattenden from Nations Royalty. Derrick, it's good to see you again.
Good seeing you.
Let's start off talking a little bit about what's happening with gold here. We're at Beaver Creek. What's the sentiment you're picking up on when you chat with investors, other companies? Perhaps you're chatting with bankers and analysts. What's the overall vibe you're getting here?
I mean, in general, I would say enthusiasm and a lot of energy and excitement, especially kind of if I compare it to Beaver Creek a year ago. I mean, gold price specifically has flown, is doing very, very well. And companies that have some gold exposure have done quite well in that. So I just say lots of energy, and lots of people think we're kind of the start of a new bull market, and it's a good time to be placing bets in the mining sector.
So let's turn the discussion to Nations Royalty. We've had you on before and Rob McLeod, but there's going to be people who are sitting down, they're going through our Beaver Creek playlist, they're unfamiliar with the company. So can you give us a quick little high-level overview of the company?
Sure, yeah. So Nations Royalty, we are Canada's first and largest majority Indigenous owned, managed, and governed company. And that's quite intentional for that, because we are building out a mining royalty company, but we are focused on a different opportunity set. We are largely focusing on royalties that are owned by Indigenous groups in Canada, which they can receive through their impact and benefit agreements that they enter into with mining companies. And so, yeah, we're looking to build a royalty company out of those assets, and I guess the essence of it is, it's our belief that the Indigenous peoples of Canada can and should create their own mining royalty company, because they have fantastic access to assets and have a unique competitive advantage in that regard that can't be replicated. It's ultimately coming down to their status as rights holders on these lands.
So just high level projects that you guys have royalties with. I know the one that I find most interesting, that the first time I actually stumbled across it on their website, I couldn't believe the numbers, was the KSM project, currently ran by Rudy Franck and Seabridge Gold. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about some of the royalties that you have.
Sure, yeah. So we founded off the company with partnering on a portfolio of IBA assets from the Nisga'a Nation from northern BC. So when we got 5 of them, so all of our assets at this moment are in the southern part of the Golden Triangle. That's Nisga'a Nation territory. So the first one would be on Bruce Jack Gold Mine, so high-grade underground gold mine operated by Newmont, makes about 250,000 ounces a year. So that one's in production. Then that's a gold mine. Then there's one on the Premier and Red Mountain Mine, which is 2 nearby deposits. You can kind of think of it as one operation, let's say. That's owned by Ascot Resources. That one is like near production. It was briefly in production in 2024. They got behind an underground development, had to restructure the debt, restructure the equity, got a new management team, and it's now going through a strategic review to figure out the best path forward to restart that, because the mill's built. So that's good. And then there's one on Kitsault, which is a molybdenum project. That one's privately owned by a group called New Moly. So there's not a ton of public disclosure out there, but they should be putting out a new pre-feasibility study in the next couple of months here. And then, as you mentioned, yeah, the most valuable one in the portfolio by far is on KSM, which is the world's largest fully permitted but undeveloped gold copper deposit. So it has over 47 million ounces of gold and over 7 billion pounds of copper in reserves. It's literally about as big as it can get. And the first 7 years production, according to its PFS, is about 1.4 million ounces a year. So that would make it Canada's largest gold mine by about a factor of 2 over Detour and Canadian Malartic, which are kind of the two biggest right now.
How much revenue are you guys currently generating?
So right now, the only one in production and paying is the Bruce Jack one. Right now, at these metal prices, it's probably looking to pay about Canadian 1 to 1.2 million. And it's what we get paid there it's a percentage of the BC mineral tax. And basically, there's a way for that to kick up into higher gear in the future. But for now, it's around Canadian 1.2 million.
Okay, so I think one of the questions that we've been kind of asking Rob every time we see him is in terms of additional royalties. Are you guys knocking on some doors or getting close to some new deals?
Yeah, I mean, at a mining conference today, but we spend more of our time at Indigenous conferences, right? Because the biggest catalyst for this company is our next Indigenous partner and next new royalty. We are in talks with many different Indigenous groups across the country. And one thing I will say, since we started this company, one thing we offer these groups as well is we can act as financial advisor to them when they negotiate or renegotiate their IBAs, and we charge nothing for that. And so we can go in there and say, hey, we'll come in and help you get a great piece of the pie on this mine. And then, of course, on the back of that, then we could start a discussion on what a partnership could look like. And yeah, we're looking to get a partnership out as quick as we can. We want to show off the strength of, just what sort of quality is out there in the Indigenous royalty space, because basically every mine in the country is affiliated with an Indigenous group on the ground there, and the space is entirely untapped. There's hundreds of millions of dollars of payments each year to Indigenous groups, and there's only been one transaction in the space so far.
I think that one question we have to ask for our audience that probably views it as a bit of a risk of the business model is that we've got groups that are taking their royalties, or I don't know if concessions is the right word, and they are effectively crystallizing them into shares of an equity. And theoretically, they could, sell their paper and then start over again and demand new concessions. How big of a risk is that? And when people bring up that concern, how do you respond?
In many of these cases, for the Nisga'a Nation, it made sense for them to do 100% of their payments and 100% shares. For a lot of other, my guess is that's actually going to be probably a pretty atypical scenario. More typically, when we go to these nations, we'll probably be looking to partner on the portion of the payments that they're investing for their future anyways, right? Because if you're one of these nations and you're getting payments, and let's say there's a 20-year mine life, what's going to happen in the status quo is you're going to get payments for 20 years and then the payment stops and goes to zero. So it's really important that each year when you get that check, you're spending only, let's say, a portion of it on your community today, and that you are saving a portion for that future. And they're maybe taking that money, investing in the stock market, right? And I think if a lot of mining companies would be honest with themselves on this, if you own, let's say, a gold NSR on an operating gold mine that's world-class, to take that money 1 year at a time and just invest in the stock market is really a pretty big squandering on what that asset can truly be worth when it's pooled together with others of similar quality, right? And so I think Indigenous groups would say, like, look, they're looking to make the most out of their assets for their nation for this limited time window where this mine's operating. And I would hope a miner would encourage them to do that, to try to benefit as much as you can from this limited opportunity that you have. And then also I would just say that for a lot of these Indigenous groups, from just a prudent diversification perspective, let's say they're receiving a payment from the mining company. They might be receiving a sharing of tax revenues from a government. They might have lots of their members employed at the mine. They might have businesses directly tied to the mine, and they might have side businesses kind of indirectly associated with the mine. If that mine failed tomorrow, all of that takes quite a bath. And so we're coming to them saying, hey, do you want to partner on a portion of one of those elements?
Okay.
And you'll be a lot less all your eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Okay, so it's not like you just lose that alignment.
Well, no, and then also we'd be entering into like share lockup agreements for a period of time, and I mean, I guess you can also ask a miner, like, what do they see as creating that alignment? Is it only those financial payments? Are they doing anything else for the nation, or is that literally it? Is that all they're doing?
Okay.
I don't know. You'd have to ask the miner that, but.
We've seen some mergers in the royalty space, just recently Elemental Altus and EMX Royalty. Is there any way that nations would get involved in M&A at this point? Or
To begin with here, again, in the long run, like, we'll look at anything in the long run, but in the near term here, we're going to be focusing on new Indigenous royalties because the quality's, quite impressive there, and we think there's probably better deals to be had there, but you never know in the future. I mean, hypothetically, if we wanted to increase the liquidity, and this is, again, in the future, we have a bigger portfolio. Obviously, if there's any merger between two royalty codes that we think makes good sense, we'd always look at that.
last question for you here. If I'm an investor in the company or I have you guys on my watch list, what should I be watching out for over the next 12 months?
So there'd be, let's say, two main catalysts, like current portfolio and outside the portfolio. In the current portfolio, it would be Seabridge Gold getting a partner. I think our stock could have a good chance of, performing quite well in the back of that, right? Because some people aren't even necessarily aware that we have exposure to KSM. So them getting a partner on that would be huge for us. And then outside the portfolio, and I'd say probably the biggest catalyst for the company would be the next transaction. So people can start, seeing in their mind better these multi-nation alliances taking shape, seeing that we're able to go across Canada, and they can just look at the asset quality for themselves and ask themselves, should a tiny microcap royalty co be able to get involved in that asset? Should that happen, or is this kind of an anomaly, and what's going on here?
All right, well, Derrick, thanks for sitting down. I think that this is one of the most interesting stories here, especially in terms of its uniqueness. There's nothing else like Nations Royalty. Obviously, royalty stocks have potential to do phenomenally well, as we've seen with companies like Franco and Wheaton. So I appreciate you sitting down here and doing this with us.
Yep. Thanks.